Officer Don Reid was also a performer.
He was a very good magician, very good with cards.
Don loved to share his talents, and people would ask him to do card tricks because they were so fascinated by it. He would do these in briefing. He would do them if you're having coffee on the hood of a car. And then I was really blown away by the fact that he performed at the Magic Castle. That's how good Don Reid was with his card tricks. Aside from being the card trickster guy, I mean, he was also a very happy guy, a happy-go-lucky guy, and he was a jokester.
He was a big jokester.
Reid's sister remembers all the teasing. She also remembers when Don offered to do a magic show for her 13th birthday.
He was really nervous about it, and he told my mom, "I'm so nervous." And she says, "Why? You've done this before." And he goes, "Yes, but not for my brothers and my family. And now I'll know the truth if I'm any good or not, because if I'm not any good, my brothers will tell me the truth. And I'll be the laughingstock of the family if I'm not any good."
He was no laughingstock. He owned it, giving his performance all he had, the same way that he was on the streets of Garden Grove, where he knew the narcotics game like no one else.
Don knew how to do his job, and he knew how to do it very well. And so he carried himself with a great deal of confidence, but also a great deal of humility and a self-deprecating sense of humor. And so it made it really easy to interact with Don and to look at Don as an example of how younger officers like myself were supposed to be doing police work.
Everybody kind of has their niche in this business. Drug enforcement was Don's and mine. And yeah, I think we competed, but I think what it really did, it made us both better cops.
He'd use their lingo. So that's what made him so good at what he did. It was not being the tough cop or anything. It was the ability to get someone to admit what they were up to and what they were doing.
A commanding presence, a super cop who loved taking down the bad guys.
I don't think he had a mean bone in his body. And I used to wonder how he could be a police officer because he was so nice.
Always a professional, Don Reid took some ribbing from the other officers about his hairstyle. Remember, the year was 1980.
So the afro wasn't his normal hairstyle. In fact, my mother really hated that afro. And if you notice on the memorial itself, it's not the afro because my mother came down with the picture she wanted and made sure that it wasn't the afro. That was kind of funny that we always consider, again, the teasing, joking guy, that was his laugh at her, was that he's got this afro, is all the pictures of him.
All joking aside, this little sister looked up to her big brother.
I can't even express to you the larger-than-life personality that he was, and that he was indeed my hero. I was 13, he was the coolest guy I knew.
Michael Rainford was pretty cool too. Like most of the officers in the late 70s, he embraced what was known as choir practice. It was a way of letting off steam after a shift, just like the officers in the classic Joseph Wambaugh book, The Choir Boys. At one choir practice in Bicentennial Mall, Rainford got physical with this monument, which was then under construction.
Come on, you got it. Come on. You're almost there.
He got it in his mind that he could climb up that thing, even though it's kind of a sheer face on it, and set a can up on top of there. We said, "You're nuts. There's no way that you're gonna." He's struggling and he's fighting and he gets all the way up there to the top, and now he's trying to figure out how he can set the can down without spilling it, okay? Because it's about half full. And he's trying to figure out how to do it, and he goes like this. Ah! And once he took his hand off the right side to try to put it and grab it back out again, he lost his grip and slid back down the thing. Bam! Landed on his butt, of course, and everybody just busted a gut, you know.
That kind of determination worked in Rainford's favor on the streets, and so did that dazzling smile.
He truly was like this ray of sunshine kind of guy.
His smile would brighten up a whole room, and always had a smile. Even if he wasn't happy, or he always had a smile.
He wasn't gung-ho, everybody's got to be arrested, everybody's a bad guy.
That empathy may have come from some rough edges when Rainford was growing up.
I think he kind of looked at it as his way of atonement for some of the things he'd done younger. Because it's an old saying, the best cops would make great criminals. Because you have to have that mindset. And Mike had that mindset. And he'd sit there and go, okay, well, these guys just did this wrong. What would I do if I just done that? And boom, he'd take off and he'd find them.
Mike was pretty good about handling calls and getting out there and digging stuff up. He was impressive for such a young man.
Rainford loved being a cop, and he loved his co-workers, so much so that when he got a new credit card, he went a bit overboard.
He's buying drinks for everybody. At one point, he kind of had his head down and, hey, what happened? What's the matter? He said, my wife's going to kill me. When she finds this credit card bill, she's going to kill me.
I never, even to this day, like credit cards because of that incident.
He said, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was happy.
Rainford died before holding the son who bears his name. But that son knows what his dad was all about.
He was the guy that was usually in a good mood, even when stuff wasn't necessarily right. He was the one that usually had a smile on his face, and if he didn't, he was doing whatever he could to put a smile on your face. Looked out for his family and his friends.
Howard Daly's, known to some as Little Howdy, worked for the Orange County Sheriff's and Placentia PD before he took Garden Grove by storm.
Howard was a class act. He was very impressive.
He was a total and true go-getter. You could not hold that guy back. You couldn't put a harness on him to have to be the first guy that runs out to do this or to do that. Howard wanted to be in the front all the time.
I do remember if you asked him to do something, he'd always say, no problem, and you knew it was done.
That can-do attitude served him well. He used it to help cadets study for their exams and pass them. He was equally generous to the families he protected from the gang members and drug dealers that tried to take over the streets of Buena Clinton.
I can remember Howard standing really with a group of kids and a group of young children and some mothers, and he was passing out candy to the kids, and it was just showing that real human side of what an officer can do. He was a human being first and a person first, and he certainly displayed those qualities in everybody he came in contact with.
I can't remember a single officer who had a negative thing to say about Howard. I think they considered him the cop's cop.
Daly's was even known to occasionally give breaks to a few would-be drug buyers.
So he tells this guy that if he gets out of that Buena Clinton area in under a minute, that he won't arrest him. And he goes, oh, you know, of course, the suspect, the guy, is very thankful. So he says, I will just beat feet and get out of here. And he did.
Daly's loved a good laugh. He also loved a certain beverage that puzzled his co-workers.
I remember when he switched, or at least temporarily, from coffee to drinking tea. To see a big guy walking around with a little cup and a tea bag hanging out of it, it was kind of funny. It's not that manly image, I guess, that you might want to portray as an officer, but it didn't matter to Howard.
Daly's was a gentle giant and devoted dad.
Loved his boys, never missed a night where he didn't call the boys and tell them good night, and just a good guy.
They were all 5 good guys, the best. And yes, Garden Grove's Fallen 5 were heroes in the truest sense of the word. They didn't want honors and memorials. They wanted to do the job and get home to their families. The families they loved so much are the main reason for this memorial.
Well, I'm sure they'd probably be embarrassed at all the attention that's being given to them. But I would hope that if they were in our shoes, they would understand why we're doing it. And how important it is, I feel, to remember them. And so I would hope that they would understand that the reason that we're doing this is so everybody would know their stories.
We remember them as heroes, but we'll never forget the little things. Myron Trapp, the yodeler, Andy Reese and his big cars, the magician, Don Reid, Michael Rainford's over-the-top generosity, and big man Howard Daly's with his tiny teacup. Larger-than-life personalities, each and every one.